Hello and welcome back to RamsTalkPodcast. And we're here today after possibly one of the most boring games of all time. A 0-0 draw between Derby and Oxford. Not many shots, not many talking points, really. But thankfully, Derby have got a lot to talk about. It's been reported this evening that John Eustace is at Moor Farm right now. We've got the inside info from Jack Doughty as well, who's actually at Moor Farm as we speak, who says that no one's been allowed near the main building. So I wonder what's going on there. So it looks like Derby have got their man. It looks like John Eustace will be coming through the door, and we've got loads to talk about what he can bring to Derby and if he can stop us from having games like last night. So joining me today, we've got Rams Talk debutant Oli Dunkley. How are you doing, Oli?
Yeah, good, thanks. Got a good bit of sleep in yesterday at about 7:45 for a couple hours, so feeling good after that. And yeah, lots to talk about today, thankfully.
Yeah, there is. And I have to admit, if it wasn't for Eustace, this would be a long slog, I think, this episode. We've also got a man who, if you're on YouTube, you'll know exactly who he is. It's Chris Matthews Redwoods. How are you doing, Chris?
Good evening, mate. Good to be back. Good to be back.
It's great to have you, mate. It's great to have you. Yeah, we're very organised at Rams Talk these days, and we're having a look at who's available. And I saw Chris is available. It's like, come on, get him on, get him back, get the band back together. So very excited for this. So to kick us off, let's talk about the game against Oxford. There's really not a lot to talk about. I mean, it was really boring. A 0-0 draw, not many shots either side. I think Derby's best proper chance probably came to Nathaniel Mendes-Lang on the edge of the box, who put it straight down the throat of the goalkeeper. And apart from that, Derby didn't really create a lot. Oli, I mean, it's become a bit of a theme of Derby recently. We've not scored many goals since the turn of the year. And it was another one of those games where Derby just couldn't create anything to put Oxford under pressure.
Yeah, it's just still out of ideas, isn't it? Like, I know we've obviously lost Warren, but we've still got the same people in charge, and it just feels like there needs to be fresh ideas or something from somewhere, because there's just, attacking wise, it's not working. Defensively, it's actually all right, but need to score goals to win games, as simple as that. And it's just hard to see where the goals come from at all at the moment. It really is.
Yeah, it is, and that's kind of the problem, isn't it, Chris? That Derby have had, and I think it probably comes from what's happened over the Paul Warne era. It was all get it down the line, get the ball in the box, and teams have worked that out. And now Derby are trying to do other things to get through, but we're just not used to playing that sort of way. I mean, from your perspective, watching Derby, I mean, do you think it's something that we'll be able to turn around?
Well, we need to. It's as simple as that. It was dull as dishwater last night, wasn't it? I mean, who needs sleeping pills when you've got that? And it's been the case for quite a while now. You can definitely tell that Hamshaw is a worn coach. Say it's been solid defensively last couple of games. At least we haven't lost, which has been a massive bonus. But yeah, yesterday that is completely devoid of ideas going forward. The fact that Mendes-Lang is still, one of our biggest threats is concerning at his age and in the league we're in and in the position we're in. So yeah, I haven't mentioned him yet, Eustace, but I'm really hoping that once it's all confirmed, he can bring some ideas in. Because yeah, it was painful last night, and I think it summed up the Warne era perfectly.
Yeah, it did. It really did. And we have to look at some of the positives, though, because there were actually some. Sondra Langos, Ollie. I mean, he looked good at Norwich. Don't get me wrong. I thought he looked good, but I thought he stepped up another level yesterday. He was playing on his wrong side, which we'll talk about, but he just completely controlled that defense. Every time Dembele, Protetta tried to get him behind him, he had them every time. And there was that funny moment, which I think Darby posted earlier as well, where he just sort of got in the way of Dembele. Dembele completely lost his head, and he's just like, be quiet, mate. He's got that, that housery about him, which you really want to see in a defender as well. I mean, Ollie, how impressed have you been since he's come in?
Oh, I mean, it was, as you say, it was good against Norwich, but it was just fantastic yesterday. It's just the dark arts and being able to wind up opposition that I love. Like, as you said it, with that clip, he wound him up and he just sort of blanked him, just let him do it. Like recovery, I think there was a couple of times, and it's been a bit of an issue, the ball over the top, I think, with Derby. Some of the centre halves, I mean, Cashin and Nelson, not like slow, but not the quickest. And there were a couple of moments last night where maybe if it had been one of those two, then Oxford might have got in. So it's just it's weird because the defense has been so good, but then you realize actually I think it could be a bit of an upgrade. And yeah, great signing so far. Long may it continue.
I can be happy with that. Chris, I mean, Ollie mentions there, he looks like a bit of an upgrade. I mean, he looks class. I mean, we knew he was a Norway international, right? We knew that he'd played at a good level. You know, he's played in Europe. But the fact that when he came in, I was told that he wasn't great on the ball, and that was one of his weaknesses. And then he comes to Derby, he looks great on the ball. He's pinging passes forwards, and he looks just as good off the ball, you know, working back, winning the ball. Ollie mentioned there the recoveries. I mean, how impressive has Langos been, and how much can he improve? You know, this is 2 games into English football. Surely the ceiling is so high.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, you mentioned that people had thought he wasn't very good on the ball. He would have fitted in perfectly, wouldn't he? Really, but the surprise has been fantastic. And you know, I'm not gonna say he's better than Cashin yet. I think we need to give him a few more games. But I think we have to give credit to our scouting team for actually finding him. You know, we can't, you know, we cannot warn in his team for quite a lot of things, but you know, good on him. He was obviously a long-term target, and yeah, I think he's just what we need. I think he's everything we were hoping Sonny Bradley would be 2.5 seasons ago, 2 seasons ago. So yeah, great signing, great start. You know, a lot of our transfers recently, the start has been poor and they've got worse, but with him, all good so far.
Started well, now he can get worse. So clearly that's the next step. I mean, Paul Longdon in the comments has compared him to Igor. I mean, that's a big comparison, isn't it? But again, it's players that carry that sort of gravitas are hard to get hold of. And I completely agree with you, Chris. That comparison with Sonny Bradley is probably quite a good one. You know, we expected him to come in, put his stamp on it, be that sort of wind-up merchant, whilst also being pure class and leading the team out from the back. And I think he's done that. But Ollie, one of the things we changed from Saturday, I mean, I thought at Norwich we defended really, really well, but also I thought we played out from the back really well as well. And we had Langos on the right-hand side of the 3. We had Matt Clark on the left-hand side with Nat Phillips sort of rooted in the centre, cleaning up. Derby changed it, and I'm guessing it's to deal with Placetta's pace, that because he is fast, he is really fast. That's all I could think. But they put Langos on the left, they put Clark in the middle, and then they put Nat Phillips on the right, and it looked like it really upset the balance. None of the back 3 wanted to pass in the directions where they needed to play the ball. Don't you think that kind of hurt Derby a little bit, and is probably, I mean, potentially one of the reasons why we struggled to create?
Yeah, there was a lot of just Langos holding the ball. I mean, Ozo as well, but there was a lot of just holding the ball in that kind of left back area. I will say, like, with praise Langos, one issue with him for me is he doesn't dribble forwards, and maybe that was where it was lacking. So yeah, it didn't quite work attacking wise. Obviously, defensive wise, it was great, but
one thing at a time, Ollie. One thing at a time.
Hey, we've got to take some bits of positive because they're hard to find at the moment, unfortunately. But yeah, it didn't work, did it? And it really, really struggled to. But then there were also just, I don't know. I think there was not a lot of movement in front of him, so it's kind of hard to judge him based on it as well, really. But definitely, it looked a lot more fluid on the right than the left.
Yeah, it was proper Warnism, wasn't it? And we've got a comment that's come in from Ian Taylor saying Hampshire said Langos was on the left to counter their pace, which, to be honest, what I thought and would be the only reason behind it. But that's a real Warnism. You know, we're playing Oxford at home. We should be the team in the ascendancy, but instead we've set up just to counter them at the detriment to our own game. And I think that's one of the big weaknesses of Derby over the last sort of 6 months, maybe 8 months, maybe even the whole time that Warren's been here, that underdog mentality, Chris. I mean, we moaned about it loads, didn't we, in League One, that we're going into games against Shrewsbury, Fleetwood, teams like that, and no disrespect to them, but Derby should be turning up and running the game. And in a lot of those games, we didn't. We've come to the Championship, we've done it again, and it's really not worked.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's almost that small club mentality that Warney had to have at Rotherham, because no disrespect to Rotherham, they are a small club. I'm going to offend everyone in Rotherham now, aren't I? I actually only live half hour away from Rotherham, so I better sleep with one eye open. But in terms of in terms of, there's been a lot of talk over the past few days since the Eustace thing. Derby are a big club; they've got a big pull, and it doesn't translate on the pitch, and it hasn't done for years. As you say, Oxford at home. I think we'd all pinpointed this game quite a few weeks ago for one of those we had to go out and win it. My opinion was, instead of playing an extra defender yesterday, put an extra bloody forward on. Go for it. This is a game. I know we creeped just out of the relegation zone, didn't we?
Scored.
On goal scored, which is a surprise in itself. I don't know what that says for everyone else, but yeah, there wasn't a point when the shackles were let loose and it was like, go for it. And whether that's because we've just not got the ability up front to actually do that, which part of me thinks it might be, but no one was taking the risk. Oli mentioned about centre halves dribbling forward. We didn't have that Richard Keogh marauding run, get the crowd going. There wasn't any of that. So yeah, it was a tough watch, but I think the big club mentality needs to come back, and the dominating the ball and getting that momentum, because every time there was a iota of momentum yesterday, it was gone within seconds, and not surprisingly, the crowd turned, and I can't blame them. I did exactly the same thing watching it at home.
Yeah, I mean, that's what tends to happen, isn't it? Is if you set up negatively in these sorts of games, fans do get frustrated. There were people around me shouting within 10, 15 minutes. I mean, there was a time at the end that really stuck out to me where Matt Clark did so well. He beat 2 or 3 players and then turned around and passed 30 yards back. And it was like, come on, man, you got to pass forwards. But I think that's a good point, is that it's the players in front. And Malcolm Christie actually put a really good Y Scout screenshot out earlier, looking at the passing of Kenzo Haldmine and Marcus Harness and where they were. And I think that was a real issue that Derby had, was that Kenzo would pick up the ball and he'd look left, he'd look right, and he wouldn't have an option. And he'd have to pass sideways or backwards. And it happened every time. It took 2 or 3 touches. I mean, Ibu Adams, I love Ibu Adams, but every time the ball came to him, it took 3 touches to get it out of his feet. The players are playing in a way where they're not used to having the ball in the middle. Kenzo was not used to having the ball in the middle, which is bizarre, because at the start of the season, you could tell he clearly was. And he'd pick up the ball and he'd, shift his weight around and get moving. Ozo the same. But at this point in time, it feels like it's been trained out of them. And that's why I want to get onto our next topic, which is obviously Derby's potential. I'm saying potential. I hope to God by the time this recording ends, we've announced it. It's pretty obvious it's John Eustace, isn't it? But John Eustace has a really good track record. I mean, I had to do a little bit of research for a news bit I did for a local radio station, and I had to do a bit of digging on sort of his past, and it's really interesting. He went to Kidderminster. He took them from being, a kind of mid-table team. He took them up to the playoffs. They played what was described as a Barcelona style of play in non-league. He then moves to Birmingham. He plays a lot more pragmatically. He sets up and plays to the strengths. He got a lot out of players that ended up getting relegated. He got them up to 6th. They were flying. He got sacked. Rooney took them down. Although I don't know whether that's just the Rooney effect. And then he
makes me laugh. Sorry.
And then, ends up, goes and moves to Blackburn, and they were nailed on for relegation at the start of the season. I know I said this at the weekend, nailed on for relegation, and they're up in 6th. They're flying. He's got the best out of the players he has. Oli, he's got a lot of work to do. I mean, the title of this episode, how does he fix this Derby County team? In your eyes, how does John Eustace fix this Derby team?
Well, I think he's got to find something out of some of the players, because he's got to work with what he's got, which is going to be difficult. And it's going to be confidence, I think, is going to be the thing that changes, because tactically, I don't think he's going to be able to do much. It's so late in the season that he's probably going to have to mostly build on kind of what Warren's got. I imagine it will be the same kind of back 5, solid at the back. And then he's just got to, can he get the best out of a Mendes Lang, or dare I say a Caden Jackson, which at this point in time, I'm not sure what his best is, but he's got to get someone firing from the forward line. And yeah, he's just got to find something tactically. I'm not sure how much is going to change. Like, I don't see where the goals are going to come from. So he's got to just change something with some players' mentality, whether it's confidence or I don't know. It's going to be difficult, but I do think it's probably, as you say, he's a good man for the job because he's been elsewhere and got way more out of the players than you'd have thought. Like that Blackburn team on paper it's pretty average, if I'm honest. It's definitely not a sixth place team. So if there's someone to get the most out of some pretty average players at the moment, John Eustace is probably the guy.
Well, Chris, he took the job knowing what he's got. He knows the team that Derby have. He's seen the results that they've had all season. He clearly must believe that he can get something out of this team. I mean, how do you think he can fix this team?
I think baby steps. I think, we see a lot of managers come in, especially this time of year, and try to change the style, try to change everything from top to bottom. He can't do that, in my opinion. Well, I've missed the last couple of Rams talks, but in my opinion, he was given, our new manager should have been given at least a couple of days of the transfer window. He's got to work with what he's got. And I think, can he get an extra 10, 20% out of those players? Probably. And I think 10, 20% is all we need to survive by the skin of our teeth. You mentioned earlier about, having the ball in at the middle of the park. I think we could see potentially a different Kenzo because he might actually be given that freedom to dictate play. But yeah, he's under no illusions. And others are, it's going to be a tough ask. You look at the quality of the squad, you look at the teams around us. 3 months ago, I was saying there were 3 worse squads than we had. I don't believe that anymore. I do believe we are where we are for a very good reason, and he's got his work cut out. But I was, I'll say pleasantly surprised. I was stunned when his name was actually mentioned. The fact that he'd come here, and yeah, I would like to think that he would come in, get the basics right. We've got a solid foundation in terms of our defence. He's got to work his magic moving forward. But I think just giving players like Kenzo that freedom to actually express themselves a bit, and not having Paul Warne in their ear. And I think that will take a few weeks. It's not going to happen against QPR on Friday night. They're all going to have that, not chip on their shoulder, but Paul Warne on their shoulder, whispering in their ears, saying backwards, backwards, backwards. So yeah, I'm excited to see what will happen. I'm more excited to see what will happen in the summer and next season, but I'm under no illusions that it's going to be a massive battle between now and then to stay in this league. And let's face it, that is his objective, keep us in the league. And my stance at the start of the season was, if we survive on goal difference, great, and that's still my stance. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but I'm a lot more confident with him at the wheel than I am with Warne.
Absolutely, it's made me look forward to going again, if I'm honest. I think for quite a long time, you know what you were going to get. Warne clearly had one philosophy and he couldn't change it. I want Eustace to come in, put his stamp on it, and really analyse games and use that to his best. I think for me, the big change will be the standard of coaching. I really do, because he's got a really good setup. The guys that he's going to bring in have been pretty much everywhere with him. I think it's Ryan Lowe. Is that his name? Is that the right name? I know his second name's Lowe anyway. It's hard to remember these things when you're live. But he's Eustace's number 2. He's got a 100% win rate with Derby. He was Derby's caretaker manager when we beat Man United in the Cup all those years ago, 2008 or so. If you want to think back that far, maybe 2009, where Chris Commons scored that goal at Pride Park in the first leg of the league.
Even hit bloody puberty then, Jake. Bloody hell.
Yeah, I know. How old was I? 10. There we go. So remember it well. But yeah, it's a good management team with a lot of experience, and I think that'll play a big part in it. I think a lot of Warne's management team were inexperienced at this level, and you could see it every time they came up, they went back down, and that was for a reason. And that's why I think it would be really good to get someone in with that experience. But Ollie, the main thing for me, and the main thing for, I guess, everyone, is seeing a little bit more going forwards. We've mentioned it a few times already. And John Eustace is going to have to play a big part in putting the confidence back into the team. But if you're going to pick one player out going forwards that you think Eustace might be able to change, who are you picking?
I feel like, honestly, someone like Jerry Yates. I feel like him playing in the front two, he's looked a lot better since Salverson's come in. Obviously, for whatever reason, I guess maybe some of it's fitness over the last couple of games. It's not been a front two for the vast majority. But someone attacking wise has got to step up, and I'm going to go with Jerry Yates. I just think he's not a lone striker. He's just got that ability to play off someone else. And yeah, I'll go with that. I think as well, looking at Eustace compared to Warren, there's a lot less crosses. So with less crosses, there'll be more through the middle. And I think Yates has got that technical ability to play through the middle, which has been lacking, because let's be honest, with the crosses that are put in, Yates is not going to get on them. It's not tall enough to win headers against some of these centre-backs. Every team in this league has got massive centre-backs. And yeah, so I'm going to go with Jerry Yates. Why not? Score 5 or 6 for the rest of the season. Bold prediction.
Well, start of the season, he was playing flicks around the corner, scoring goals. And then as Derby stopped playing football, he's sort of faded out a little bit. So hopefully you're right. It's David Lowe, by the way. Thank you, Paul Longdon, in the comments. Ryan Lowe is a very different person. Chris, if you were going to pick an attacker that you think John Eustace might be able to get the best out of, you're not allowed to say Jerry Yates now. You're banned. Ollie said it. Who are you picking?
I've mentioned him earlier, Kenzo. I think he'll be given the freedom. I know I'm not allowed to mention him, but on Jerry Yates, him in prime form could be the equivalent of what we had with Vidra. You know, he wasn't a tall bloke. He was buzzing in and out, and I think that could be brilliant. But anyway, I'm not allowed to mention him. So yeah, Kenzo, I think he's the potential there. We've seen it a few times, especially earlier on in the season, but it was like he had he had so many defensive instructions that he had to carry out, that freedom. And I've mentioned freedom a few times now. I just think if Eustace gives him that, almost go and do what you're good at, go and have fun, I think is a big thing for me. I think if he's allowed to do that under John Eustace, I think we'll see the best of him. And I think he really can be the playmaker and that dictator in the middle of the park. We're talking about, teams coming here and they dictating the play to us. He could be instrumental in us dictating the play with them. And I can't wait to see what he does with him.
Well, he did a bit of that last night, didn't he? Especially in the first half. He was buzzing around, playing bounce passes off people. And yeah, he looked like he wanted to play. He just needs, the system to suit him a little bit more, I think. One thing I will say as well, you mentioned freedom there. For me, another big thing is the fact that we change so often and players are constantly changing and shifting roles that there doesn't seem to be a lot of understanding there. And when you look at players, you mentioned Kenzo thinking defensively. He's also having to think differently because he's playing a completely different position. And I think that lack of familiarity between the team, the lack of familiarity with systems. I mean, how many times have we changed system this season? Like, it's a ridiculous amount of times that we've changed system. It's unreal how many times we've gone from back 3 to back 4 to 4-4-2 to 4-3-3 to 4-2-3-1 to 3-5-2 to 3-4. Like, how many times can you change system in one season? It's ridiculous. How do you expect players to be familiar with the way that they're playing if you play like that? So, yeah, I agree with both of you. I think get a bit of familiarity in, get a bit of freedom in, unlock the best of the likes of Yates. We haven't even mentioned Salverson, by the way. I think Yates and Salverson will link up really well, like they did at Cardiff for that goal where Yates put it on Salverson's head. So, yeah, let's hope that John Eustace can awaken these players and turn into world beaters. So, we need to look ahead, don't we? We need to look ahead to Friday, Valentine's Day. Will love be in the air in London? Probably not, because Derby are playing QPR. And we always seem to lose to QPR, so I'm not feeling very confident about this. But thankfully, to give us a bit of insight into Queen's Park Rangers, who Derby did beat earlier in the season, but seem to have had a marvellous resurgence since then, is Hoopsa. Really good guy, really like him. Let's see what he has to say.
Listeners, Connor here, aka Hoopsa, a QPR YouTube channel and podcast. Here to talk you through QPR season so far ahead of Derby versus QPR on Friday night. So starting off with how have QPR performed this season? It's been very much a season of two halves for sure. Just one win from our first 16 matches and then just 3 losses from our past 15, which puts us within 4 points of a playoff place, which sounds absolutely ridiculous and has been ridiculous to watch. Since the sort of middle of November, we have really turned a corner. Martí Cifuentes went very much back to basics with his style of play, started to build from the back again, and we started to pick up results, and once we did, we went on quite the roll. And now we've worked ourselves into a position where we hopefully won't be looking over our shoulders for the rest of the season, but maybe even upwards, which, as I say, just feels completely ridiculous to say. There was a slight bump in our form over the past couple of games towards the end of January with a 2-0 home loss to Sheffield Wednesday and then a 2-1 loss at Millwall. But QPR did get back on track with a 2-1 win over Blackburn Rovers last Tuesday evening. Now, of course, at the time of recording, John Eustace is heavily tipped to be going to Derby as your next manager, which potentially puts QPR in the bizarre position of playing 2 consecutive matches against 2 different teams managed by John Eustace. So, next question, which players are likely to cause the most damage against Derby on Friday night? Michael Frey has been in really rich form at home, scoring 5 of his 6 league goals this season at Loftus Road. And the same could be said of Elias Chair, with 4 of his 5 assists this season coming at Loftus Road as well. He was moved to play the number 10 role in our last game against Blackburn, and it worked really effectively, so I'd imagine that might be something that we see against Derby again. And he really controlled the game in that one, so if he's played there again, I think there's a good chance that he'll be a player that Derby will have to keep a close eye on. 2 other players I think worth giving a shout out to: Koki Saito, a left winger on loan from Lamel. Just the 1 goal to his name so far, but he has played a lot of different roles for QPR this season and has only just come back into the team for a first start, but he's been looking really electric over the last few games. He runs at defenders, he's incredibly tricky, and you only have to look at the goal that he scored away at Hull last month to see how dangerous he could potentially be. The last player I'd call out on the opposite wing is Spurs loanee Yang-Min Hyuk. He's only made 2 appearances from the bench so far. He had a very, very powerful shot denied at Millwall and looked really effective again coming on against Blackburn, so I imagine he will be involved in some capacity here, and he does look dangerous running at defenders. On to QPR's weaknesses. Over the last few games, our defence, which has been really reliable in this second half of the season, it's been a little bit patchier. Against Blackburn, the 1 goal was a penalty that we conceded in the second half, but in the matches before, conceding 2 against Sheffield Wednesday and 2 against Millwall, there were really poor defensive errors. We've not been quite as strong there as we have been previously in this stretch. Steve Cook, who was an absolute rock for us in the first half of the season, has come back into the defence over the past 2 games. He has looked a bit rustier than I would have liked, but he is still getting minutes under his belt. He'll likely feature against Coventry on Tuesday night as well. So there is a chance that he will be looking more like his old self by the time that we play against Derby. So let's round off with a score prediction. I'm going to have to back QPR at home. We've won 6 of our last 7 there, 5 in a row until Sheffield Wednesday arrived and got back on track against Blackburn Rovers. It will, of course, be a tight game, especially if Eustace is appointed by then. But I just think we're looking really confident and playing some of our best stuff at home. So I'm going to go with the 2-1 win. Thank you so much to RamsTalkPodcast for having me on to chat about our season so far. Enjoy Friday night's game and all the best for the rest of the season after that. Hello.
What a guy. Wow, that was scary. I didn't press the button quick enough then. I won't do that again. That was really, really interesting, actually, Ollie. First off, playing the same manager at 2 different teams in the space of a week. I'd love to know how often that's happened before. But it looks a tough ask, doesn't it? QPR in inspired form at the minute, really. They looked so poor when they came to Pride Park earlier in the season. To be honest, it was a poor game until suddenly we switched it on, scored 2 really good goals, and then shut up shop. I mean, it's going to be a tough game at Loftus Road. It always is, but I think this one is going to be even, tougher.
Yeah, it was actually a very similar game to last night at Pride Park. Just there are a couple of moments of quality. It's going to be really, really hard. They're definitely not the same team they were earlier in the season, which is quite impressive, to be honest. They've not changed their manager. So to get that level of play from there, but hey, you never know. I think it'll be difficult. Hopefully, if they're confident, then they're going to keep the ball a little bit more, because I think it's the teams that park the bus that really, really trouble Derby at times. Even last season, it was a massive issue against the teams that played tighter and didn't give a lot of space. So you never know. Confidence might play into a more counter-attacking style. And yeah, I think his 2-1 is probably probably about right. But you never know. John Eustace might be able to get more out of the players than we've seen so far.
We haven't done the score predictions yet, Ollie. Hold that. Don't show your cards too early. Don't show your cards too early. Chris,
you can tell he's a bloody newbie, Jake, can't you? Getting here already.
Where do we find him? Where do we get him from? Chris, I mean, it could play into Derby's hands a little bit. We saw Norwich really come at Derby at times, and that helped us because we could soak up that pressure and hit teams on the break. As Ollie said, when teams sit back, we tend to struggle. When teams come at us, it gives us the option to hit them on the break and use some of the pace that we've got going forward. So do you think Derby have got a bit more of a chance, weirdly, against QPR than they did on Tuesday against Oxford?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you know, God, what are we on now? 7:30. We should have Eustace in by Friday, but knowing Derby, you never know. But yeah, I think that new manager bounce will really help. I mean, I've got to give credit to QPR. They were one of the worst teams I've seen at Pride Park when they came earlier on in the season. So how they've turned that around, that is absolutely brilliant and good on them. Yeah, it'll be, you know, it'll be tight. I think it'll be one goal in. I think the first goal will be crucial, and I'm just praying that we get it, because I think I think you'll see the confidence then really coming through. But yeah, we've got to, as you say, I think play our best game, which is the counter-attack game currently. And I think if we do that, we've got a good chance. But who knows? You know, give Eustace a few days. We could be watching a very different style of play, and we can't predict that. So it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, it'd be pretty funny, wouldn't it, if we just turned up and started playing like champagne football, like Kenzo hitting 30-yard back heels and stuff like that. I mean, we saw it a little bit when Langos chipped a ball into the face of Zetterstrom when he was on the line for him to clear last night, which I think was the closest to a bit of excitement we had all game. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, like we said, it seems like Eustace is going to be announced Wednesday morning. If you listen to this, he's probably already been announced, hopefully. So let's go with that. It'll be a massive positive for us if we can get that sorted, give him a couple of days in training and give him the chance to, I guess, come up with something, come up with a plan. There's no doubt he's been thinking about this since the moment that he agreed a deal or agreed to speak to Derby. He'd have been looking at what games we've got. He'd have been looking at our team, and him and his management team would have been coming up with a plan. So let's hope they've got enough time to implement it. So let's have some score predictions. If you're in the comments like Jim, who has gone early like Ollie did, let us know your scores. You've got about a minute before I get to the chat. Ollie, what is your score prediction and what are your goal scorers?
I said it was about right, but I won't go with his prediction. I think, you know what, I'm going to go 2-2. He said in his preview video that QPR are prone to a bit of defensive mistakes. So I'll go a defensive mistake. We'll go Yates as one, and then a good old set piece, because Set Piece FC hasn't scored one for a while. So we'll go with Matt Clark. Matt Clark and who does say Jerry Yates 2-2.
God, I think every Derby fan would take that. Chris, what do you reckon, pal?
I've got to compliment Ollie starting off with a blooming Desmond on his first attempt. That's a really good prediction, that is. I'm going to go 1-0. I think we're going to do. It's going to be a smash and grab, and I think Salverson will bag a header towards the end. Away fans go wild, and Eustace starts the bounce.
Well, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Jim says he's put QPR 1-0. Oh, we'll beat QPR 1-0. I thought he put QPR 1-0. We'll beat QPR 1-0 with Sondra Langos scoring the goal. Adam Lilly says 1-1 with Salverson, and I think I'm probably going to agree with Adam as well. I think it's probably going to be a draw, but I'd snap your hands off for a draw right now. It's a tough place to go. They're in really good form, and if we can avoid defeat again and once again give Eustace something to work with, we'll play easier games this season. It'll be 13 games to go after that. So take a point, move on, and yeah, hopefully Derby can get full. Chris, you can't shake your head, mate. We take what we can get. We can't win every game.
Rams talk has changed. Where's Vic with the 4 nils? Come on.
We're not playing Cheltenham anymore, mate. It's harder now.
It's all too negative now. Like we're gonna have to
Yeah,
to Rams talk. Like
gabbing ya.
3-0. Yates is going to score 2. I think Salvesen Scorpion from a corner, from a Matlock flick on. And yeah,
That's better. That's
that's from
better.
overhead kick, from a goal kick as well. Why not?
Yeah. Let's go back to being delusional. Come on.
That is exactly what we want to be, as delusional as possible. So thank you so much for listening. If you did enjoy, please do leave a like, please do subscribe. If you're on Spotify, Apple Pods, leave a rating. You know what to do by now. I say every week. If you can donate, if you have any money lying around that you'd like to donate to Derby Food for Thought Alliance, help feeding kids in Derby that suffer from food poverty. We're running lots of miles at the minute. It's endless suffering, actually. I don't know why Jamie made us do this, but we've raised quite a lot of money for charity, which is great. So if you can donate, the link is in the description for you to donate to our Just Giving there as well. So be very grateful for that. So thank you very much for listening. And Ollie, you better know what you're doing here. It is goodbye from me.
That's goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me. I almost forgot.
I thought you were going to call it like woke
With a 5-star
nonsense.
rating. I thought our rating's got to do that. There we go. Goodbye
Job
from me.
done. It's goodbye from Chris, and it's goodbye from us all. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon.